Namaste. On Spiritual Doctors for Holistic Health, we again welcome one of our favorite guest, one of our speaker, Dr. Sweta Adatia ma'am, who has came earlier as well on this our platform, and her talk was much deep, much inspiring. Dr. Sweta Adatia is a senior neurologist who is practicing at Dubai, and she is founder of Limitless Brain Lab, through which she makes people to understand about their brain, and through how to use the optimum potential, optimum performance of brain to live their purpose and the meaning of life. All of us wants to live a good life, good quality of life, but how to do that from neurological perspective? We are going to listen today from Dr. Sweta. She has a number of talks on YouTube. You can listen many more talks after listening our talk or on this topic. So now Dr. Sweta, the platform is yours. Kindly enlighten us about your wisdom.
Thank you, Dr. Ranjan, and thank you for all the spiritual doctors for holistic health. I'm extremely always passionate to talk to the fraternity and to the colleagues. And I think this is a great initiative because, a lot of people who are in science consider spirituality as a little bit voodoo. And then people in the spiritual realm don't consider scientists as relevant or as serious about what the spiritual practices are. So I think I'm a great fan of bridging this science and spirituality. And at the Limitless Brain Lab, this is exactly what we do. We want people to understand scientific evidence and realm of what spirituality is like. And I always, share a small anecdote saying that, if spirituality was missing in my life, practically, then I don't think so I would have been here without taking an antidepressant or possibly an anxiolytic drug, which anyways I don't want. So spirituality is that realm which is extremely important to sort of, have self-awareness, to have that standing for the world that we live in. Currently, it's a VUCA world, volatile, ambiguous, uncertainties. You just don't know what will come up tomorrow. It's been such a time that we are living in, but spirituality is that anchor. Now, today, since we are on this wonderful topic of the continuation of the spiritual journey with the holistic health, I will be talking on meditation and chanting as a prescription. So all my colleagues and friends who are listening across the world, this topic is going to be, can you prescribe a certain type of chanting or certain type of meditation to your patients? And essentially all of these techniques, I call it as a super brain hack because we have seen some amazing things in our laboratory, and I'll be sharing a couple of those as well. So as Dr. Ranjan rightly mentioned, I live in Dubai, but I have had the opportunity to live entirely across the globe, 5 different continents. I have had the opportunity to work with some stalwarts such as Dr. Brian Weiss. I've had also the opportunity to have some colleagues in my lab and facilities where we were able to publish a lot of papers. My latest book, Future Ready Now, is now, thanks to all the readers, a global bestseller. So there's been a lot of work which has happened, and extremely grateful for all my patients and all the people who have supported this entire journey. So at the lab, what we do is we take some brain data. So we do all the cognitive analysis, we do an in-depth psychological analysis. We have various kinds of EEG, different kinds of EEG softwares, different kinds of platforms where we understand the brain's wiring. We also have some form of FNIRS, all the advanced modules in terms of brain assessment, etc. Our main job is to study the peak performers. How are the successful people's brain functioning? What is inside their brain? And then also a lot of people with anxiety, depression, attention deficit hyperactivity, they all are seeking for answers beyond just a mere conversation saying, oh, hey, you are depressed, or hey, you are anxious. Everybody wants some form of a measure. And I strongly believe what you can measure, you can manage. So we are able to give those sort of insights. I think Daniel Amen runs the largest such kind of a clinic back in the West, right, in the United States, where he has lots of samples of SPECT scan as well as QEEG, where he merges them and gives a beautiful insights about the psychiatric point of view also. But we also use in the lab a lot of resources for meditation, for chanting, what are the effects, etc. as the talk goes on, I'll be sharing a few. I was just, wondering where do I start this as a prescription? And I thought, let me go to PubMed. PubMed is a reliable source for us doctors to go and find out if there is an evidence back into the things that we are talking about, right? All our colleagues who have index papers, etc., gets onto the PubMed. I just wrote meditation and health, and look at the results that I got, roughly about 5,000, which is not bad. However, not enough, if I would say, to such an incredible practice such as meditation. And then I go and type meditation and brain, and then it collapses to around 1700 search. And then I say, okay, chanting for diseases, which even further collapses down to just mere 700 papers on that. Again, that includes not just chanting as chanting, but also music therapy, etc. And the moment bang, I go and put a cholesterol lowering medication, you have 30,000 results, So this is very interesting that a lot of work when it comes to pharmacological stuff. Now, anxiolytic medications, right? 27,000 papers to go to of various kinds. So when it comes to evidence, and I'm a strong proponent and believer of this, that medications have always been the norm or go-to, but meditations or chanting or other alternative science has not been a go-to because of the lack of adoption of those practices, because not of the lack of awareness, because we come from India, we come from ancient Indian tradition where we have all the scriptures talking about it. We have enough ample evidences back in our scriptures, but I think it's the new age evidence which is what is lacking. Now, meditation for hypertension is just nearly barely 300 search. Now, if you and me had hypertension, and believe me, if you do it as an experiment, I always believe in doing something which I can do as an experiment. So that becomes an experience. And then that experience then later on collates. A lot of people do it, and that becomes an evidence. So very strongly, I can say that meditation has a huge, huge, huge impact on reduction of your blood pressure, on calming your nervous system down, on reducing your pulse rate. But not all of that anecdotes go into the research. So it's basically also the evidence which is stemming out there, right? There are some wonderful books now. For example, this is one of the very interesting books using meditation as medicine. But as mainstream practitioners, our exposure is sometimes limited. So I won't be sort of this in telling that the science of alternative medicine is not less explored. There's enough exploration. It's just that it's less evidenced. So it is your and mine job possibly to bring in certain elements, to start giving as a prescription, to see what is helping. Now, patients also have a little bit of a very weird psychology, I should put it, and let's be candid about it, that, once they hook onto this, they want to get rid of their medications. They want some magical cure out of the prescription that happens for meditation. There are no magical cures in the entire physiology of our body and systems. It is a fine, intricately made system, right from my mind to the brain to the entire physiology. I call this the psycho, neuro, physio, immuno, endocrinology system. It is just a beautiful mix, starting from the mind to the brain to the entire physiology trickling down. Now, anything that has to make a change, you have to consistently practice it. You have to make it as your lifestyle. You can't do it for 5 days and say, hey, all this is going to be all right. If you are able to take a pill, which is like a cholesterol lowering pill or a blood pressure pill that you are going to take for life, you don't mind taking that. Then why not a meditation or a chanting, which can become a part of your lifestyle? Now, of course, I was a huge skeptic myself, as a mainstream, because I'm not exposed to the evidences. Let's put it a fact that way. But when American Academy of Yoga Medicine, which is in US, gave me an opportunity to become a mentor for a couple of their modules, one of them was neuroscience. I started to go deeper because always yoga, always meditation, and all that was sort of my tradition back home, etc. But I was very fortunate personally. Certain people came into my lives, my spiritual teacher, etc., who changed my perception even further. And, being a critic always, you don't just accept, but yes, you move and you get across from the journey of skepticism to acceptism. Took a while for me. And I always would say to any of the doctors or any general public who is listening to this wonderful podcast is that please experience. Do not dump the idea just sheerly because you fail after a couple of days. Just experience it longer, experience it enough, because that is where the magic lies. That is where the cure lies. That is where the change lies. This is my spiritual teacher, and I always talk this about the anecdote. Many years back, I met her. I was just about 16, 17 years old. And she would go meditate 4 a.m. This is the rising sun in UAE last couple of years back when she was here. And before many years back, I would say, oh, I'm happy horizontally meditating. I don't think so. I need to wake up this early, first of all. And I don't think so. I need to meditate because I don't see any reason or rhyme for it. Then came a very deep personal crisis in my life. I had a very dear childhood friend, 20, 23 years of relationship. And then suddenly one fine day that was broken. The pain was really sheer deep. And sometimes they say that the pain of such a breakup can be equivalent to breaking a few bones. So as physical as you can feel, and in that emotional trauma, emotional torture that I went through, and I had no sort of respite. It was a very restless feeling. I thought, let's go and try meditation, let's go and try some breathing practices, because all that was happening in my brain. And I was very fortunate. I could take the brain back to the laboratory and say, hey, what's happening in my emotional brain? What is really kicking in there? And I was able to see relevant changes and then sort of monitor it, track it. And then essentially the first thing that changed my life was breathing practice. And then came, of course, the meditation. So everything became more like an experiential journey, because that pain was something which I wanted to break free. I really, yielded to break free because it was beyond me to handle. Now, all of us go through either a deep pain, which is what is beautifully said in Japanese kensho, or you just get an insight. Possibly as I'm talking to you, you may relate to your incidents, what could have happened in your life, and you can say, oh, yeah, Dr. Shweta went through this, and possibly that applies to me as well. And boom, that insight is enough to change your life, which we call Satori. All of us go through these experiences. And sometimes these experiences come as patterns, not just because the universe is deciding to give it to you as patterns or there is a package deal which is happening. It's essentially because you as a person or you as a brain is not learning that lesson to move on. Your circuits are still firing the same way. Your circuits are reacting still the same way. Your reaction has not changed to the response. So it is essentially the same thing which you will keep getting back and forth. So when I say I did my brain scan, this is the picture how a QEEG appears, the quantitative EEG analysis. So we do take a normal EEG, but then we run through special algorithms. We at the lab have made our own special software where it runs through every single portion of the brain just to understand what part of the brain is firing, what is really happening inside the brain in the front portion, in the back portion, what are the connectivity types, what is both the sides of the brain talking, etc. It's a very detailed analysis. Now, if I were to talk about the brain a little bit, because that would put things into perspective. Why should we do certain things that we should do? So if I take the brain, first of all, I have the left and the right hemisphere. And these two are the ones separated by a very, very thick bridge called corpus callosum. Most of us are into practice and we understand the way the brain is arranged. But let me just give a very quick insight. This is very superficial because currently we have a lot of networks identification. Lots of work has gone into identifying certain networks, certain ways in which clusters of cells are organized, the way in which the entire thing operates. The common networks are salience network, attention network, default mode network. When I'm not just doing anything, let's say I'm just sitting here, automatically my default mode network will lead me to ask questions about myself. Automatically, there will be a self-inquiry which will set in. And that's the job of the salience network. The moment I want to remember something, my first thing would be my attentional network would be active. Oh, please tell me what am I supposed to remember, etc. So all these networks are beautifully arranged, but a little bit difficult to complex to understand. So the best way to understand is going to be that there are three parts of the brain. Essentially, this hypothesis is also fairly old. Some of you who are real neuroscientists would agree to that. But let's make it bare, like absolute uber simple for the people to understand. So there is one bottom called the brain stem. That brain stem is where I'm breathing, my pulse is there, my heart is beating, all my essential survival functions are happening. It is also called the reptilian complex. I go a little further up, there are 3 or 4 important set of clusters like hippocampus, cingulate gyrus, insula. This is where my emotional cortex lies. So all my emotions, also called the limbic. So for this entire session, we will put it as limbic system. And then when I go up fourth is all where my rational cortex or neo-mammalian complexes. This is a very, very important part because when we study the peak performers, what we see is they have a very well developed frontal part. We all know that the cover of the frontal part does not begin by the age of 22 to 25. That's why teenagers can be very difficult when it comes to decision making, because this part of the brain is important in a few things. One is intuition, judgment about what is good and bad, rationalization of any idea, looking forwards what is going to happen, the future, and essentially regulation of my emotional response. Now, emotional brain is very important because I should be able to feel, if there is a care, if there is love, if there is concern, if there is trust, I should be able to feel that. But at the same time, the same emotional brain is also trying to warden off or cordon off the threats. And in good old times, the threats used to be lions and tigers. So our hunters, when we were hunters, we would have to get rid of these threats. So our emotional system was always ready of guarding us, protecting us. But in today's time, if we look at the threats, they are, okay, newspaper says outage. Yesterday, there was a big, huge CrowdStrike outage, right? And what happened was the IT was shut down. All the planes could not fly in Heathrow. So this is a threat. Today, if I have to travel and then that becomes a threat, my boss email suddenly talking about something which is out of the blue where my job can be threatened, a friend's email talking completely, we've become a little bit of a touchy in that regards. So the emotional system is trying to protect and say, hey, there's a threat. Yes, there is a threat. There is a threat. And it's always in this fight, flight, fear, or freeze mode. Rightly so, because it wants to protect you. But when it overruns, and this is like a balance, it's like a little switch. When the emotional system is overrun, it's completely active, your frontal cortex is shut. When that frontal cortex is shut, you don't think right. Very clear example, go back to your anger. Just remember one time when you were super, super angry. What will happen is immediately you can't think rationally. In the anger, you would blurt out everything and then you would wonder, oh, I should not have said that, because then your system two or your rational system sort of catches in. And Daniel Kahneman has beautifully, beautifully suggested that as system one and system two in his, I think, Nobel Prize winning book. So it's a very simplistic mode of understanding, but very important. Now, we as humans have got this amazing facility for this frontal cortex. Now, look at the animals. The frontal cortex is really small and the limbic is big and the cervical cortex is big. So if we as humans have to explore our entire potential, if we were to bring in all the best things that you and me can do, then we need to focus on building, really strongly building this frontal cortex, without which nothing can happen. Now, the same thing for our patients. If the patient is stressed, if there is burnout, if there is too much of trauma happening in the person's life, and trauma can be micro emotional traumas, which is just enough, people come and talk to us about all the relational issues. There's lots of, I was just looking into the divorce rates, and there is a big, huge divorce inventory which is published of late. There was 74% divorce rate in one of the countries, I think it was Russia. That's just alarming. That's just incredible, right? So the question comes is, there is so much of a disconcordance happening when it comes to relationship. So when the person is stressed, this prefrontal cortex is out. There's weaker control of emotions, and then you don't know what you're acting out, because you may be acting out completely in a state of emotional disarray, and that may not be the right state. Now, there are four fundamental brain waves. So you understood the three parts, and then there are four fundamental brain waves. The first is, as I'm talking to you, we are integrating in a chat. It is the beta, because I'm concentrating, I'm thinking. That is my fast rhythm called beta, which is generated. The moment I close my eyes, there is a slow rhythm called alpha, which is generated. When I'm about to go to sleep, just before I sleep, there is theta, or a little bit of a dreaming stage or a trance state. And when I fall off to sleep, the slowest wave called delta comes in. Now, all these waves have roles to play. How do we decide which part of the brain is well functioning? We should go and check the waves, the way the waves are functioning. Is there enough modulation? Am I able to move into theta and alpha? How good is my alpha peak? How symmetrically distributed are my waves? How is the coherence? How is the crosstalk happening between the two sides of the brain? How is the crosstalk between my emotional center and my prefrontal cortex? All this is very simple and easy to determine. So let me show you from the lab one of the brain scans that we have. So if you focus on your left, there is high beta. You see some green and orange, kind of orange-red color on the first half. Now, after one single session of Brahmari, we took a repeat this after just one single Brahmari. For all those who is not aware, it's also called the humming bee technique. Is what you do from the palate as long as you can. Some people close the tragus. There are various versions, but in the Western sense of it, it's called humming bee, and in the Eastern sense of it, it's called Brahmari. It's one of the pranayams. I love the word pranayam itself. It's the vital force of prana, and you're trying to, get back that vital force. So in that, if you see just after one single session in that high beta, there is this change of the color. There is red means higher, more amplitude, increase in the size of it or increased amplitude of it. So just by one single session, you were able to shift that amplitude. Now, if I keep on doing this over and over and over and over again, I can quickly get into that states, even sometimes without the Brahmari. And when you have high beta, multiple repeated high beta episodes, you develop gamma. And gamma is one very important rhythm, which is for overall cognition, overall understanding and development. The learning becomes very fast. The emotional regulation is super good. The depression goes away, anxiety goes away. So all those are seen in people who meditate. Now, same thing for a colleague of mine. You can see it in the meditation space. There is little theta on your left at the center right here, the last small red, just 5 minutes, simple 5 minutes of a meditation. By the way, there are many, many, many varieties of meditation, and some of you can join one of our online sessions where we talk of neurotyping of the meditation. Some of them would need concentration, some of them would need visualization, some of them would need relaxation, some of them would need forgiveness and love. So it's not just that any meditation is fine. Now, if you typify it, if you individualize it, the effect is slightly better. That's all. I mean, any meditation, for as long as you do it repeatedly, as long as you make sure that it's consistent practice, it's good. So you're seeing this shift in the second half where you see a lot of theta. There is a red, literally like a red pool of that color, which is the excess of theta, which is now generated. The next time when this person further meditates, possibly in the baseline state, this is a dynamic scan because we are asking the person to do something. In the baseline also, you can have a high theta. That is very good because now the person can access all the creative features. It's like a little trance state. You go beyond the typical understanding, etc. There are enough studies. This is one of the study from Harvard where they have done a functional MRI. Functional MRI is always quick, easy, but very expensive. So very difficult for us in the private settings to do it on a regular basis. But this is a study where the red signal that you see on the right-hand side is the signal of the amygdala, is the signal of that limbic part, which is active. And after months of meditation, you see that limbic part slowly subsiding, the color fainting and making it towards yellow. Now, these are followed up experiments, and lots of such experiments have suggested what are the changes which are happening in the brain. There's one example which I can quote here of a professor or a teacher of mine. He's a yoga master. He's also a physicist, a scientist who has been doing these practices for every single day, right from the getting up early in the morning at 4 o'clock, about 3 or 4 hours of practices. And you do see an entire red gamma, which means there is very high gamma happening, very high beta, very high alpha, very high theta, and obviously which indicates that your entire brain is now functioning. There is availability of those connections, etc. Now, this is a live example. And frankly, I always tell my patients that, look, I'm going to prescribe to you something which has benefited me. The things that has benefited me has been breathing, has been meditation, and some form of chanting. Now, breathing, many varieties and types are available of pranayam. Each and every pranayam has a significant role. Anulom Vilom, the alternate nasal breathing, has a separate role in the brain. Your Bhastrika has a separate role. Brahmari has a separate role. Each of them have scientifically been studied, and enough evidence is there for showing what is happening in the brain. Now, why it should be there, because we need to go to the why of it before we just say, hey, it's just a pranayam. It's not just a pranayam. It is a pranayam which can make your life better, which can make your life changed. It can change the structure and the chemistry of your brain. See, I never say I mind. I want you guys to think a little bit on this. I never say I brain. I always say my mind or my brain. So there is this gap which is there between me as an observer and my mind. And most people, when I take a little survey, Dr. Ranjan, you'll be surprised. They say, oh, what is your scale from 0 to 10 of your mind's thinking? And they say it is beyond 10. It's always overthinking. It's always, beyond what is required or prescribed. So this mind and I am the observer of this particular mind, and this breathing becomes the bridge. The breath is the bridge to this mind. The moment I have, and we haven't even discussed mind, by the way, mind is the most complex, beautiful, amazing flow of thoughts. It is not just in the brain. It is pretty much all across. Mind just fascinates me because in 1 minute you can be right into Switzerland, in 1 minute you can be straight to a place which you like always. So mind can take you absolutely in control, and you can just be all over the place, etc. So we're talking of mind and brain in the regards of the entire system of this limbic and the prefrontal cortex that we are talking. So this breath becomes this bridge. Now I became aware. I start to recognize that this is my limbic firing. I start to recognize that I am angry. I start to recognize that this is the emotion that I'm feeling. If I feel the emotion inside me, then I suffer. So many years back, there was a beautiful another spiritual scientist that I met, and he said, beautifully. He said, if you want to treat anxiety, if you want to treat depression, if you want to treat any of the mental illnesses that we are talking about, just put your mind on table. And a couple of minutes, I could not understand that what does he mean by putting the mind on table. Essentially, what he meant was, let us create this distance. The mind is sad, you become sad. The mind is happy, you become happy, which means you are intertwined now to the mind's physiological responses. So our job to prescribe to a patient, or our job to understand, is to create this bridge. And it's not that easy a bridge. By the way, lots of things are happening when we are breathing in and breathing out. The pre-boxy complex, which is right at the brainstem, there is this amazing, wonderful vagus nerve, which is the longest nerve in the body, which is supplying our parasympathetic system. So there are two systems operational in our body: parasympathetic, which is my basal tone, my breathing rate, my heart rate. It allows me to be stable. And the moment I have a threat, I can fight that threat. My sympathetic system comes in, my heart starts to raise, I start to have all the muscle, the power comes in, I'm ready now, my pupils dilate. That is my sympathetic system. Most people in today's time who fall into the stress and the burnout category have a high sympathetic resting tone and a very low parasympathetic tone. And that is that vagus nerve which is firing, which is not enough firing for these people. So what we see when we do anulom vilom or alternate nasal breathing or bhastrika or alternate fast breathing, or even for that matter, simple diaphragmatic breathing, even if you don't understand the entire hula of it, most people are now breathing only from the chest. If we start to breathe from the diaphragm, we give enough inhalation, we hold, and then we give enough exhalation, then we are kicking in this vagus nerve, and the connections are directly to the prefrontal cortex and to the amygdala. So all the triangle, I would say this is the golden triangle. If you understand this triangle and the modulation of this triangle, none of the mental illnesses would remain as they are. Yes, sometimes the patients are in panic, they can have severe anxiety, they can have severe major depression. You don't start breathing practices then. You have to get the chemical thing appearing. You have to take allopathic support. You need to calm them. You need to get them into a baseline. And then you start to give the practices. So I'm not saying that these are the practices which should form a part of the only therapy. It is a complementary thing. It is allowing the patient to shift from that threat brain, from that continuously overactive threat brain, to a little bit of a safer brain, and then to the drive brain. Because if you identify these people, when you talk to them, what are they saying? I cannot perform in life. I have doubts all the time. I'm always in low mood. I don't think so I can think straight. I keep procrastinating. I cannot engage in good, healthy emotions. I always feel secluded. So all these will be the emotions which are running from the threat brain. So slowly to make them into the motivational part of it can take time. And especially breathing techniques have to be learned over and over and over and over again. My favorite, most go-to technique is ocean breathing. And that's what I keep telling people, that I have a favorite acronym called MOVERS. So meditation, ocean breath, visualization, exercise, reading positive things and scribing negative things. If you do it every day, 20 to 25 minutes of your time, you keep yourself hygienically, both emotional hygiene, physical hygiene, mental hygiene, spiritual hygiene. You sort of take care of all the layers. I'm not just this physical self as I see. Yes, I have atoms, I have molecules, my protons, electrons, but I also have a field called electromagnetic field that I'm generating. And this electromagnetic field is well studied by the colleagues in energy science. So we are not experts in that, but energy science, the chakras, what we see around the energy, etc., are very important to evaluate as well. There are many ways in which we can evaluate. Functional medicine is coming up big way. In fact, you would be surprised to know in America, there is a new system of practitioners, which is going to be called as medical intuitivists. So they just look at you and then figure out, oh, this is the problem. Your liver can have a problem, kidney can have a problem, and then they refer. So this is not happening from the physical self. It is happening from the deeper layer of the self, of the electromagnetic field that we can generate. I had this wonderful Japanese professor visit me in the lab last week, and he looked at me and he says, oh my God, you have a very nice crown and all your energies are up here, but your body is struggling to match that energy. Your everything is all right, centered around intuition and crown chakra. And he said, do you feel tired? I said, yes, I do feel tired. Do you feel exhausted? I said, yes, end of the day, I'm exhausted, because your body's chakras or the body's energy is trying to catch up. So they have a very unique way of understanding the energy science of it. I'm exploring. I'm a great learner. I love to experiment, and I'm very open to people who come to me and say, hey, why don't you try this? Why don't you see this? What is happening, etc. Now, chanting is also a very, very important thing. In the good old traditions, chanting used to be given by a guru. There used to be a mantra, etc. There's a lot of things which is in the chanting. I think one of my latest videos on neuroscience of chanting has close to around 300,000 views, just because, chanting is close to Indian ancient tradition. We have been doing it for last so many years, not just Indian Hindu tradition, but look at chanting, what happens in the mass of the churches, look at what happens in the Muslims, the prayers that happen. So all this has a deep influence in the brain. So what is happening in the brain? The emotional regulation is optimized. You feel united with the self that I was talking about. And then, of course, there are ample health benefits which are arising as well. Now, I had the fortune, when I was a very young kid or almost unborn, I would say I was in the womb of my mother, and my mom used to work in a laboratory, and there was an Arya Samaj laboratory. So she was working right from morning till evening. And there were some 1,000 people who would chant this Gayatri mantra every day. And then 9 months that sort of kept on happening. And I was a little delayed speaker. So around 3.5, when I started to speak properly, I was able to recite the entire Gayatri Mantra. And so Gayatri Mantra has been sort of part of me for many, many years. And till today, all the Anushthan, all the this of it for me is like a Gayatri. But I'm sure people would have certain mantras which are very dear to you. And that's not just accidental, it's all also how you pick up a certain intonation, you pick up a certain resonance, because it is all very scientific. The way you are chanting, the way you are speaking, if you take up a certain languages of the words in English and put it in a tonoscope, you may not have a beautiful architecture or geometry which is produced. But if you take up certain words of Sanskrit, in fact, Om has been studied a few times on that tonoscope. You can create a beautiful geometrical architecture, which can be almost simulating to that of a Sri Yantra. You can practice it. I just got a tonoscope, and you can just keep on practicing, keep on doing the things with it. As I said, experiment to the experience to evidence. This is the only way out. Now, this is my brain, and Gayatri Mantra over the time has been shown to have intellectual powers. It can grant you some cognition, abilities to learn faster. So because I had this habit of doing it very regularly, I still do it 108 times every day. It's a part of my life. It's a part of my everyday's existence. So you do see a higher alpha. to all the people, and we replicated this study in the people who were not doing it. We asked them to do 2 months of a regular practice. We came back with the baseline alpha and their alpha peak, and you will see between 8 and 12 is the normal alpha frequency. Anything under 10 is kind of not good. Anything over 12 is just amazing. So you do see these alpha peaks stemming up. Suddenly, in a person who had never practiced Gayatri, and over the couple of months, she did it very religiously, regularly, and she shifted from a 9 to a 12.5. I shifted to 13. And once this happens, it stays for good. So it's great for learning, it's great for overall cognition. The higher the alpha peak that you're able to produce more at the back of the brain, you still want slightly higher at the back of the brain. That is very good, or centrally. There are ways in which, the neurofeedback, what we call, which can also amplify alpha. So if you have a chance, and maybe we can do it one day as well at the lab, that you increase the alpha by a neurofeedback and you increase the alpha with a chant. What I feel is with the neurofeedback, you just got alpha, but with the chant, you got many other benefits. The health benefits of lowering the blood pressure, of kicking the vagus, of making your intonations and your breathing patterns in sync, etc. So everything has a scientific rigor and a meaning. This is the chemistry or the geography of the crystals. This is a very popular experiment, but those of you who have not been heard about this or not seen this, it is from Professor Emoto, where he takes a little water and then he speaks to the water. Anything in the first space is about love or good words, kindness, and in the second one it's all about, it's a fool, or it's a bad word, etc. Heavy metal music is played, and you do see the change in the geometric patterns. Now, if water as a crystal, or water as a property, has this beautiful thing of influence, imagine our bodies, or imagine our cells, protoplasm, how would it function, or how would it also have a deep influence? I know it's a little bit too stretching to think like that, but there is a sense in every little thing that happens as well. Now, let me show you a couple of studies to talk about Om chanting. Om is a universal sound. It is not a religious sound. A-U-N-M, that is Aum, that is how it is spoken. It has a certain frequency. If it is played in a certain frequency, it has certain benefits. The resonance matters. In fact, in one of the yesterday's seminars, I was just telling them that try this, just say or a. See the vibration and feel that you get, versus om, or for that matter, one of the Bij mantras or the single sounds, monosyllables, such as lam. You just say la, 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 la. There is no effect on the mind. You need to be a little bit conscious. You need to be a little aware to see what is happening in the mind or your body. The moment you start to do lam, automatically there is that feeling which is happening. So there is a little bit of a science to everything what has been explored till date. So in this particular paper that you are seeing, what they did was they studied this QEEG, and post listening to the chanting of Om and post silent chanting of Om, both was studied. And what they found, activity in the attentional circuit, in the frontoparietal network, on this network here, and the default network mode. So there was an extended activity, as you are seeing. It was the highest when it was spoken. It was somewhat 50% when it was just passively listened, and it was the lowest when it was silently chanted. So I think the best moral of the story is we need to really chant it loud. We need to make sure that we are sitting straight, make sure that we are doing it regularly, consistently, to create these changes. Now, Om as a frequency has also been found to foster certain long-term plasticity changes. Now, when we say plasticity, which means what? We are trying to rewire. We are trying to readjust these neurons, the brain cells. I want my limbic system to be regulated. I don't want my mind to control me, but my mind is in my control. So all this can happen. My attention can improve, focus, memory, short-term memory, verbal memory, visual memory. All the rearrangement of the fibers can give me all these benefits. There's in this study, what they studied was the right here theta that I showed previously. There was an increase in the theta after the chanting of the repetition of the Om. So when you keep on doing that, you definitely can increase the alpha peak, you can increase the theta, you can increase the coherence, you can increase the crosstalk which is happening. Is there any particular way to speak? Not really, but when you elongate the O, then it's more awakening. And if you do the M more, then it is more sort of, a cooling off effect. So either of it is important. The way it is Spoken should also be more in terms of you should feel that vibration or feel that resonance. The way the frequency comes in is extremely important. Gayatri Mantra has been studied for stress relief. Gayatri Mantra has also been studied for a lot of people who had depression or anxiety. Mahamrutyunjay Jap has been studied. I'm not going to show all, I'm just running past because I want you to understand that these are credible evidences which are available. And one of the neurohemodynamic correlates of an Om chanting is when two sets of groups were taken. One was just doing SSSSSS or SSSSS, and the other one was chanting the Om. And functional MRI scan was taken between the group. And lovely, every single time, this is the beauty of the science, every single time, bingo, you just get that same finding over and over again, which is the limbic system quietening down, your attention increasing, your depression feeling better, your mood feeling better. In fact, this has also been studied in patients with epilepsy. So it's a great prescription for patients from depression to epilepsy to anxiety, just as a mere, now people say, oh, is there a special time for it? Is there a special method for it? Please don't go into any of those holas. What is very important is to do it regularly. It just does not matter if it's Brahma Muhurat or the morning time. It just does not matter if it's an evening time. The important thing is to do it. Do not make it so complex that you can't make it happen. And very quickly, let us talk about the meditation. Now, meditation with QEG has been really studied well. We have so many monks and meditators whose brains have been studied. In my lab also, I've had the opportunity to have some 8 or 10 fantastic brains. And each of those brains have shown exactly the same over and over again, which is both the hemispheres are in sync. There is better memory, the IQ is amazing, focus is better, and most importantly, the limbic system is down, the vagus is activated. So when you do all the HRV parameters, when you do a QSR, there are many other ways in which you can measure the autonomic system. There are ways in which you can know the stress level, the emotional regulation index. We do use a lot of work from divergence. We do have a 4-channel very quick measurement for that. We do have certain special autonomic measurements, etc. And it's always a good thing to have one number which you're working on. So if I have an X HRV, I have an X cognition, if I have an X focus, and if I have certain brain rhythm, and then I keep giving the patient a certain prescription, which is, let's say, 1 month down the line, let's come back and check it. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, if we see a significant difference, then both ways, the clinician is satisfied because now you showed a change, and then the patient is also satisfied. So these are kind of protocols which you make. And let me take you to one very popular study. This was done by Dr. Herschel here in India. He's an American scientist, and what he studied was the thickness of the brain in Pandits who are speaking Sanskrit, and he called this as the Sanskrit effect. And Dr. James' paper is also available online. And I've just sort of took the expert right from the ones where this paper was being explained, that there is an increase in the hippocampus, in the memory portion, both the long term and the short term. There is also increase or thickness in the cingulate, which is the emotional system, and both the temporal cortex, which is also very important for the memory, is activated, is increased. Just one another study where the hippocampus was shown to be big, fat, and hippocampus is the key. It's like a little key for your memory. So you attend, you register, you code, you store, and then you retrieve. These are the 5 ways in which you can have the access to the memory. So this hippocampus forms a very important part in that process to push it to the long term or to push it to the attention. It's a very important switch. In London cab drivers, because London, the streets are very difficult. So they were studying their brains and they found hippocampus to be increased, like thick hippocampus. But when Sanskrit chanting Pandits were studied, they had, and that is the reason why, you never see a Pandit. I don't know if you guys have experienced that in the merit, saying that, okay, let me just pull out the next, and then I forget, and then let me go to sorry, that was a wrong chanting. I think I chanted something which was not supposed to be spoken in the marriage, etc. You never see them. They just chant fluently. They just chant flawlessly. It's because of this memory system which is right there. Now, for children, this has a very direct implication, because the moment we allow them to have these kind of influences, Sanskrit chanting, yoga practices, breathing practices. Remember that it's a more plastic brain for children. It's growing still. There's lots of functions which are happening. So we can make these changes happen. So between 0 and 15, 16 is so many things are possible. I'm always bowled over by this number in the last trimester or second, almost to the end of the second trimester, when the brain is growing in the womb. Quarter of a million neurons per second is happening. Quarter of a million neurons per second. The speed of growth is just astronomical. And when they are born between 0 and 3, the 2,500 brain connections per second at the age of 3 becomes 15,000 brain connections per second. So that is the time, when parents come and we're chatting, and I say that, look, every minute that you give to a child is precious. Every minute is changing the brain structure, the environment that the child is in, the way the child's behavior becomes, personality, memory, focus, mood, attention, coordination, behavior, everything is determined when you are giving that right environment. So it's such an important and interesting thing of this plasticity. So this itself proves that there is enough plasticity. Now, I was myself surprised at this finding that chanting, these Pandit chantings have caused an increase in cerebellum also. Cerebellum is for balance. So Yajurveda chanting was leading to increase not just in the hippocampus, but also in the cerebellum. So it's just very interesting how the entire chemistry or the circuitry of the brain is working. Anterior and posterior connections became thick. There was a functional connectivity increase between the two sides. And all this was demonstrated in these people, and was published in the Neuroimaging Journal as well in 2016. This is one of my favorite go-to books called Altered Traits, where they talk about how the science has suggested some meditation changes, both when we talk of mind, brain, as well as the HRV or the systems physiological happening in the body as well. It's a beautifully written book. Both Daniel Goleman is one of my favorite other authors as well, and Richard Davidson. There are many credible resources for scientific explanations of what really happens. There are enough studies on PET scans. There are a couple of amazing papers from Harvard talking about a person's brain called Ming Yor, and you can see that on YouTube, etc., where they talk of how his brain age is reversed or is not at par to a 40-year-old. Although he's 40, his brain age is still at 30. So how your robustness of the brain can be. And then there is a lot of different texts talking about the types of meditation. I'm just amazed at our culture and the traditions, where we have like a little an a la carte to choose from. We can have all kinds of things accessible. It's not really this method or that method. It is not really your type or my type. It's my own system, what I am finding beneficial, or depending on my circuit which I want to develop. If I want attention, focus, I do that. If I want relaxation, I do a relaxation. If I want to forgive somebody, I'm grudgeful, my PTSD is happening, I've really not given up that thing. My energy body or energy science is not credibly telling me that. And sometimes, people tell me, but you use things like Healy and all. I don't know to what extent they're right. I said, just try it. Just give it a try. Do not just discount it. GDV cameras sometimes are good. Even simple things such as an Orla app on an iPhone, pre and post, do it for yourself. And there were people who wrote back to me, and I thank all those people who actually showed those images, pre and post, after Om chanting, Gayatri Mantra, when I was speaking in the previous talk. So this is great. This becomes your knowledge. This becomes your understanding. It's not now who I am guiding. Otherwise, if I start to talk about all the chemistry with all the changes which are happening in meditation, 100% you will be off. So it's not really about what all the changes are happening. The point is, we know what changes are happening and the outcome that I want to give it to you. So this is the outcome. You reduce your brain's loss. Every day, some brain neurons are firing, some are getting out, some what are not being used are taken away, etc. Pruning is happening. But for meditators, the reaction time remains intact, executive function remains intact, the volume remains intact. Just amazing, right? You want to have the brain's age to be the best This is one of the trials which you will find again online, that after a month of meditation practice, how this girl has this change amygdala. Same thing, the firing which is red becomes yellow, which means now you have a better control on your emotional system. And my own brain, by the way, showed that. So over the time, a couple of years, it took me a lot of practice. And someday maybe I can publish a book called My Brain Diary, so how I went from an X emotional system to an executive function to an Y, and it was a process. It is never a quick fix. It is 100% a process. So this is the Mingyor study that I'm talking about. Please read this, because these are very well done trials, and this helps us to sort of get a very credible cognitive currency. I now believe it because it's done from a credible source, it's done well, and this is what we want as clinicians. And every single person wants to look younger, feel better, and also to live longer. So the telomerase shortening has been shown to have an influence on your life, right? So you want your longer telomeres. We all know about this. So this has been shown in a couple of studies of meditation. We are doing a very big study where we will be measuring this telomerase, and we are including some 25, 30 candidates who will be doing pre and post. As soon as our study is released as well, I would be glad to share that as well. Multiple sources and papers talking about various things. In fact, the one paper which I loved was 50% doctor's visits gets reduced. Not that we will be out of job, but people would have even then other things to discuss, which will be amazing. I always, ask a doctor colleague of mine, what is the meaning of the word doctor? And it's very interesting answers come from treatment and healing. And I said doctor, which means to dossier, which means to teach. So my job as a doctor is really to teach fundamental health, to teach fundamental lifestyle to a patient. It is not just to fix, otherwise I remain as a brain plumber. And I often joke and I say, look, I don't like this job of being a brain plumber. I would rather become somebody where I'm inciting and kindling the normal brain's function, which is very, very important. Umpteen health benefits. There are physicians here, and if you have used it, please share your comments, because we want to hear from you. We want these credible information which you have seen in your clinical practice. I know a couple of Dr. Gupta, and a couple of them are amazing practitioners for it. I'm sure on Dr. Ranjan's channel also we see some very dedicated people who have been credibly practicing it and also propounding it from their experience, etc. So I'm just going to skip a few, because this is all the exact same thing which you will listen and hear. Most important thing is, please do not keep this as theory, even for your patient, because every single time a patient walks into a clinic, we do explain everything. But until the time the patient is nudged, until the time the practice comes in, until the time consistent practice comes in, wiring of the brain or the change of that plastic structure, they say one single atomic little habit takes 66 days, and 3 to 5 multiples of 66 days, which is about almost close to 300 days, for fixing that path, for rebuilding that path, for now having that consolidated path where I will keep on firing that and keep on building that. So I strongly feel that we all together can be a part of this journey of helping our patients, having a prescription of various breathing types, of different pranayams or meditations, and complementing whatever the patient has been having, or supplementing, and if possible then also alternating it. It should never happen that alternating only remains, or only this remains. It has to be a mutual understanding, a marriage where the patient understands, you understand, and then outcome can be very well curated. So thank you very much for inviting me, Dr. Ranjan. That's my socials, and I'm always available on this WhatsApp as well. Thank you for invitation. Always glad to be part of a channel which is having an outreach of people where we are influencing not just the physical well-being, but also the spiritual well-being. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Sweta. It's such an enlightening talk. What I have read in the Altered Trait, many part got revised. That's
Yes.
my favorite book, and from work of Dr. Davidson, the Altered Trait, Dawson Church has written Bliss Brain and Mind to Matter. That's also a very fascinating book. And based on those, I am teaching meditation for long times, for near about 15 years, Anapanasati meditation. But after reading Dawson Church, Bliss Brain and Mind to Matter and Altered Trait, I have modified my practice little bit at the end. Means what means I conduct a meditation. So in this session, because practice is important, so we will go for the 10-minute practice if comfortable for you.
Yes.
Do you have 10-minute times?
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
Let's do
that's
the practice for all our listeners as well. I think what we mentioned, right? Theory and practice. We should also be practicing that. Absolutely, please.
yeah. So in this, as alpha is important, we have to be in alpha, and for that there is one vagus breathing. It's alpha breathing. In what we activate our vagus nerve by a particular way of breathing, in which we inhale through nose and we exhale through open mouth, like we have to blow a candle, and the exhalation part need to be slow. As slow as we can exhale, it better it is to activate the vagus, the upper soft palate. So now, for 1 minute, let's do this vagus breathing. Sit comfortably, keep your palm in open position, and with closed eyes or with open eyes, inhale deeply through nose and exhale through mouth as you are blowing a candle. Inhale deeply and exhale slowly. We will do near about 5 times. Those who are hypertensive or taking any medication for diabetes or for anything, they can do 7 times. And once you are done, keep your eyes closed and just observe your body. Scan your body and try to relax your muscles. If at any part of your body has any tension or stiffness, try to relax them. Just give command mentally: relax, relax, and relax. And now, keeping eyes closed, let's focus on our natural breathing in our abdomen, near our belly. When breathing goes in, there's slight movement in our body, in our abdomen. Feel that body movement associated with breathing. Feel the depth of breath. Feel the speed of breath. Feel the rhythm of breath. Every breath has 4 components: ingoing breath, outgoing breath, and a space between them. As and when we are observing our breathing, we are meditating on our breathing, we can also meditate on the space between breath. When breathing goes out, next breath goes in. So in the space between outgoing breath and incoming breath, feel that. Don't try to elongate them. Just be with your natural breathing and relax. Feel your breathing and space between breathing. Natural breathing. Become one with your breath, your own breath. Feel your breath. Surrender to your breath. Now, with breath, focus on your heart. We have 7 energy centers in our energy body, in our Shushumna Nadi. Heart is the center. Feel your heart and feel the virtue of heart, love. How much divine loves you, how much love you have received from your parents, from your family. Now radiate the feeling of peace and love from your heart to your loved one. Remember your loved one, your spouse, your children, to anyone, and radiate the feeling of peace and love from your heart to their heart. Heart coherence. This is heart coherence. You can maintain the awareness of breathing, especially space between breathing if you can, or just be in heart coherence, radiating divine peace and divine love from your heart to your family members. You can spread divine love from your heart to whole humanity if you are comfortable with it. Radiate love, divine love from your heart to whole earth. Let whole humanity bath in love energy, love vibration. Love is most important in our life. Allow yourself to to get surrounded with love. Your every word, your every thought is filled with love. Last 2 minutes of meditation. Feel your heart, feel space between breath. Last 1 minute. Feel your breath and feel your spine. Feel your physical surrounding, the temperature of the room. Become aware of your body weight. Become aware of your hands and legs. In few seconds, we are going to come out of meditation. But no, you can maintain this peacefulness, this tranquility, even after opening the eyes for 24 by 7. And whenever you want to reconnect, just close your eyes and connect with this silence. Become aware of your palms and legs. Move your fingers of the hand, move your toes. Slowly, gently put your palm on your eyes for 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0. Gently massage your face and slowly open your eyes.
Very calming, Nothing to talk, I think, after this.